What's going on, coders? Welcome to this Python 3 video on garbage collection and circular referencing. In this video, we're going to explore what the circular referencing issue is within Python 3 and how that's solved by the garbage collector. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing we're going to take a look at here is the following example that I've written up, and it goes like this. So we define a class called object1, and all we're going to allow this class to do is pretty much nothing. We're just going to say pass. Now, then we do the initialization, which is we assign object1 to the variable a, and then we do a.property equal to a. Now, what do you think this will do? Well, essentially what we're doing here is we're pointing something within object1 into the object itself, thereby creating a circular reference, which essentially means that the reference count of the A object is now 2. However, as far as Python is concerned, it's only just 1, because we're saying that this A variable is pointing to the memory reference of the object1. However, the object itself is actually pointing to the memory reference of itself. Ergo, if we were to then delete the A object, still somewhere in memory, Python would actually not be able to get rid of object1 because it's referencing its own memory address, and ergo we create a circular reference. Now you might be wondering, well, how do we get rid of this? Well, the answer is that Python has its own built-in garbage collector, which you don't actually have to do anything to get that to work. It's just sort of like working in the background, toiling away, and it doesn't like run continuously. It runs occasionally. And in order to understand this fully, we have to go back and dive into the fact that we've got 3 generations of garbage collection. Now you might be wondering what these 3 generations of garbage collection actually are. Well, essentially there are thresholds in Python, and we're going to explore that shortly. But essentially there is the youngest generation of garbage collection, which is usually holding the most amount of objects, because usually objects don't survive very long. They're initialized, they do what they need to do, and then they're scrapped away from memory. And that's the first generation. Then there is the slightly older generation, the sort of second generation of object, or of garbage collection object. And then there is the third generation. And I'm going to show you how all of that works right now. If we were to look at the garbage collection module, and what we're going to do is we're just going to import that. Usually you don't need it because it runs in the background, but for this instance we'll need to import it in order to be able to utilize it. And then what we can do is we can come down here and we can say that we want to print the threshold of the garbage collector at the moment. So let's go ahead and run that. And we can see that the first or youngest generation of garbage to be collected currently has the amount of 700 objects that can be initialized in the first generation. Then we can have a look at the second generation, which is right here, and that's the slightly older generation, remember. And then we have the third generation, which also can hold up to 10 objects. Now, if we were to go ahead and print out the current get count of the garbage collection, we can see that the current objects that are actually initialized are 129 within this application. That's in the first generation. In the second generation we have 4 objects, and then in the third generation we have a single object. Now, if we wanted to run a collection manually, so we tell Python to collect any of the garbage objects that are no longer needed in our program, we can just do gc collect. So let's run that. And actually what it will print out is the version number in here. So be careful with that. You might be thinking, oh yeah, this is going to print out the amount of objects that are actually collected, but that's not the case. Ultimately, what it does is it just prints out the version of the garbage collector. Now, the fact that we've printed it out means that it's also run anyway. So what we could do is now get the get count in here like that. And if we run that, then we can see that we've collected over 124 objects in the initial garbage collection. And we've also collected all of the second and third generation of garbage as well. So to go through everything again, we create an object, we assign a property to point back to its object here. We see that we create a circular reference, and that can really only be solved by the garbage collector. So in here we get to print out what the threshold of the 3 generations of garbage collection are. Then we get the current count of garbage that is available within the garbage collection thresholds. Then we get to collect, and then we get to run again and see how many we've collected, of which there are many. I hope this video has been useful to you. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing to this channel if you've enjoyed this video and you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.